Creepers left and right, buzz like crazy. Everybody's trying to stimulate it. Spiders in the mirror and feel this can't be right. Back to the scene of a Friday night, to a blessed collision still frozen tight. Spear drinkers, Cupid and the sound of her first chime. And why did you argue? We're dreaming of those eyes, the best part of my life. And when we make love, babe, don't make a sound, the clock won't turn around. Ooh, you turn around, 2,000 little fires. And ooh, your circle is spreading. Slowing things down when I wanted to race, catching up again when you try to chase. Feels like we're playing space. You always find a way to make up, right? Even when we're such a fly, even when tensions run.
Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. I almost said welcome back to another episode of Vlogmas, but Vlogmas is over. But I do have a vlog that I am filming, obviously, since you're watching it. Jess from Peace Love Books asked me and several other people if we wanted to also film a reading vlog all about historical romances that were released in the year that we were born. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds super, super fun. And she asked us, she gave us plenty of time in advance to, I think she asked us like towards the end of November. But because I was doing Vlogmas, I didn't want to read the books and talk about them with you then. And I didn't have time to read them and film other vlog clips, like that wasn't going to happen. So today is December 26th. It's the day after Christmas. I still have my tree up, so I'm gonna maybe try and film a little clip in front of the tree because I do miss my pretty tree in the background of my videos. But Kazi is in here. He's not mad that I'm back filming in our studio because then he can just come and cuddle up next to me. He's being so cute. But anyway, so I have some books picked out for this reading vlog, and okay, so I guess you need to know the year I was born. I was born in 1981. I'm 40 years old, and I had a difficult time finding books that were published in 1981 that were available to me on audio. Because that is... He just knocked his food over. You know how he do. Because that is how I read books almost exclusively, unless it's an ARC or a rare book that doesn't have an audio that I really want to read, then I read it. I mean, I prefer to read physically, but I don't really have the time to read physically and have content to talk about. Like, if I did that, I would literally be talking about 3 books a month. That's about my average for physically read books. I definitely prefer to read physically, but I just don't. It just doesn't work with my schedule. So, and that's okay, because I've really developed a huge love for audiobooks, and now I'm to the point where that's actually, even though I said I prefer to read physically, I think I actually prefer to listen to audiobooks, which is fine. I don't know why I feel like I need to qualify that. Anyway, so I do have, so the books that I picked 3 books that I want to read. All of them are available on audio. I don't know that I'm going to read all 3 for this vlog. I think I for sure I'm going to read 1 because I have already started it and I'm almost done with it. I started it yesterday on Christmas. And then I would like to read 1 more, and depending on how the books go, I might not get to both of the other ones, so we'll see. Mostly what I want to do with this vlog is really just have a good discussion. Like, I've really been interested in going back and reading Bodice Rippers for a while, most specifically because of Chelsea Upton, who's on TikTok, who's brought a lot of attention to old school historicals and that they have value despite them being full of problematic content, or maybe even because of the problematic content. Her TikTok videos are so interesting. I've talked about her before in another vlog. I'll have her TikTok linked down below. She is by far my favorite TikToker, and I honestly don't get on TikTok very often. I just don't love that app. I keep trying to, I just don't. I just don't. But her videos are some that I really enjoy because of how thoughtfully she discusses some really difficult subjects or surrounding romance, and she does it in a really nuanced and intelligent way that I think allows for discussion, which I adore. So, I decided to approach these books that I have picked with more of an intellectual study almost. That sounds really pretentious, and that's not what I mean, but I think that if, based on the books that I've selected, based on reviews I've read of them, I think the possibility, also based on the 90% of the book that I've read currently, I think the possibility that I will be able to get just a 5-star read enjoyment out of these is slim to none. But that's not to say that this isn't an exercise in futility to find some value in these books, you know what I mean? So I chose, these are the books that are on my TBR that I want to try and include in this video. So the first book is Velvet Promise by Jude Deveraux. So this is actually still a very well-loved book, and I think that's largely because people who read this series read it usually often, that I've heard, read it when they were in their teens. It was a formative book, formative series in developing their love of romance. And I also, actually, the first historical romance author that I ever read was Jude Deveraux. It wasn't this series, it was a different book. And if you were to ask me what that book was about, I couldn't tell you. But I do vividly remember reading it, and there was castles, and it was medieval, and just really kind of loving this idea of romance in a book form that was old school, you know, to me at the time. I think it was 14 when I first read it. So I have actually a vlog, one of my earliest vlogs on my channel from 2020, where I read a Jude Deveraux book that I had gotten. The vlog's concept was basically taking one of the oldest historical that I owned, which was, at the time, Velvet Angel. I think it was the last book in the series, and I think that was published in 1984, and I have a first edition printing of that. I can't find it. It's way back on my shelves. Sorry. And then I also read The Raquesse by Scarlett Peckham. And that was kind of a deliberate move on my part to pick a new book that was deeply feminist, a new historical romance, and a very old book that was written when Bodice Rippers were still being written and just ate up by the consumers at the time. So I really didn't like that Jude Deveraux book. I kind of trashed it in that vlog, and that is still to this day my most disliked video. Man, I got some really bad comments on that video. All about basically how negative I was about her book. So I wanted to give her another chance. I think that with the time that I have taken to read more romance, obviously read older romances, but also to really think about them and to talk about them like I'm doing right now. I feel like one of the big benefits of doing vlogs is that it gives me a chance to really think about and talk with you how I feel about these books. And maybe realize things that if I was just reading it casually, I wouldn't ordinarily. So I really, really like that. So I was very interested to read from her again. Velvet Promise. Depending on where you look, it was published in either 1981 or 1980. So I was born in 1981. It was close enough. The audio was available to me, so I picked it up on Audible. The other books that I want to try and read are Sky O'Malley by Bertrice Small. Now, this book, this is a recent audiobook production of this. It's narrated by Justine Eyre, who is one of my favorite audiobook narrators. I really, really love her. She's done a lot of Sarah McLean's audiobooks. And this audiobook, y'all, is 21 hours. It's 21 hours. So that's the next book that I plan to read after I finish Velvet Promise. I don't really know a ton about this book other than she is, I believe, an Irish woman, and I think that she had a feud with Queen Elizabeth that sort of is the basis for the story. I don't know a ton about it other than that. But having looked at some of the reviews, I'm very nervous about this. Very, very nervous about this. So I believe Skye O'Malley and definitely Velvet Promise are Bodice Rippers. I think that something that is really interesting about them is how they were really the pioneers for allowing women to see sensuality on page, whereas that was definitely only reserved for men before. So I will say this clip is already 11 minutes long because I just can't stop talking. But, you know, both Skye O'Malley and Velvet Promise, and like a lot of Bodice Rippers or books, romance books published in the 80s and 70s, you know, the first Bodice Ripper, the first romance novel was The Flame and the Flower, which I believe was published in 1972 by Kathleen Woodiwiss. But they are definitely known and have a reputation for really having a lot of violence towards women. That's basically what categorizes a Bodice Ripper, sexual violence towards women. And I think that's one reason why they often get such a bad reputation, obviously, and also the salacious covers at the time. But Velvet Promise is not any different. There is direct on-page rape of the hero, from the hero to the heroine on their wedding night, and also throughout the book. And so when I started this book, I went into that knowing that was going to be in there, you know. And I wanted to see, what I really wanted to see was what appeal did these books have to women or whoever picked them up. I'm going to be saying women because that's how I'm looking at it from my lens. What appeal to them about that in these books? Why were they so popular? Why was that such a popular theme in these? And I think there are a few different theories about why that is, and one of them is that because for the first time there was sex on page, there was explicit material on page, and even if it was done in rape, it was sort of like trying to break free of that puritanical vision of that America had, that women were not allowed to enjoy sex or to enjoy I don't want to call it intimacy, to enjoy sex, and that this was a way that they sort of could do that without it being something that was like taboo, which is just really sad. Another theory that I've heard is that it was popular in these books specifically because rape was such a threat to women. It was something that they had to deal with every single day. And the threat of rape was not just the physical violence and the emotional trauma that happened because of it, but also sort of the idea that you were damaged goods, that you wouldn't be able to find love again once that happened to you. And so that's one theory behind why the heroine would often fall in love with the hero who specifically raped her, because then it sort of solved that problem of her not being able to find love, her not being able to find a man who would love her and not consider her damaged goods. So I think it's really interesting to see, when you think about the ideas surrounding romance novels at that time in 1981, and specifically like the Bodice Ripper type of romance novels, and you think about historical romance today, like how complete at odds they are, you know? It's just really fascinating to me. So I am almost done with Velvet Promise. Once I finish that, I'm not sure if I'm going to go with Skye O'Malley. Like, the main reason I want to read Skye O'Malley is because I really want to read a Bertrand Small, and I haven't yet. But also, do I want to put myself through 21 hours of violence towards the heroine? Like, I don't know. And obviously, it's not all going to be that, but I haven't heard great things about this book, so I don't know. We will see. Or do I go with the Amanda Scott, which is a much more tame, probably more palatable book, but is it going to give us anything to talk about? I don't know. I'm probably going to go with the Bertrand Small, Skye O'Malley. So anyway, that is a very, very long introduction into this video and just sort of some of my thoughts surrounding the books that I chose, my thoughts on romance books that were written at that time. And I do want to say that I think that it's often brought up that, well, you can't judge a book that was written then to today's standards. And I do agree. So I don't think that I'm reading these thinking it's got to be held up to the standards of romance novels that are being published today. That's not what I'm thinking at all. What I'm thinking is, what, if any, value is there for a romance reader today? You know? And I don't know if that sounds any different, but I mean, is the story compelling enough? You know, like, what about the heroine? Is she a strong, courageous heroine? Like, are there things in here that a modern day reader would still enjoy? And I'm that modern day reader. And I think that I'm a little surprised at my reaction to Velvet Promise. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that when I finish it. And yeah, then we'll see. Then we'll go from there. I don't know. I do want to try and keep, I don't know. I always say I'm going to try and keep these vlogs short, and then they're at minimum 30 minutes. So we'll see. We'll see what I include. I'll update you when I finish Velvet Promise. Hello, friends. Welcome back. Okay, so I have a reading update for you. I finished Velvet Promise by Jude Deveraux. And I think I'm going to go with a 2-star rating on this one. Now, you might be thinking, that's a little harsh, you know? But, like, there wasn't a lot of great stuff about this book, okay? Like, I think that I ended up giving it 2 stars instead of 1 star, largely because when I think about how I would have felt about this book if I had read this when it was published, when this was sort of the mainstream type of romance books that were offered, that were full of rape and violence towards the heroine. And would I have enjoyed it? Would I have found enjoyment in this? And I think I would have. I really do. Because it's not completely terrible. It's not a 1-star book. I don't think there is absolutely consent issues with the hero. Like, on their wedding night, I think I talked about this. Like, there's a scene where the heroine's father goes to, like, slap her, and the hero, her husband, stops him and protects her, you know? And so I'm like, oh, that's great. This is gonna be good. And then, like, their wedding night happens, and the hero slaps the heroine and then rapes her. So, I don't know. And like, it happens to her quite often. Rape is honestly a theme that is talked about very casually in here. And, like, that's not why I'm giving it 2 stars. That's a reason why. And I know that was more common, more mainstream in the 80s and 70s, but I also just feel like, did I enjoy reading that? No, not even a little bit. Was it difficult for me to get on board with this hero after he behaved like that? Yeah, it was. So that's not entirely why I'm giving it 2 stars, though, because if that was all that I was judging it on, it would give it a 1 star. So there were some moments, especially towards the end, where the heroine showed some strength, where she showed some grit, where she was definitely a heroine that I feel like we could root for in a historical that we're reading today or from the 2000s. There were definitely some positive aspects of her. The overall premise of this book is that she is basically being raised to go to a nunnery to work there, and that is what her mother wanted her to do because she thought that would be a way for her to be protected from men who would rape her. And then circumstances come to light where she's sort of forced to marry this other guy, Gavin Montgomery, and all of that training was just sort of sent out the window. And so there is sort of that theme of her wanting to have a career in the nunnery instead of just being like a wife or a woman. And that doesn't end up happening. So she's a little crestfallen with that. And so she does have these moments throughout the book where you can tell that she's really, like, trying to find value in her life and sort of push the boundaries of what was expected for a wife at that time. But I will say, one of the other reasons that I gave this 2 stars is there's really not a cohesive story here at all. Like, there isn't a cohesive story. If you were to ask me what this book is about, which I know I'm reviewing it, right? It's literally, like, they get married, she's forced to marry him, and then she has to deal with a bunch of crap, and there's another woman, and he gets kidnapped, and she goes to rescue him, and honestly, that was my favorite part. She shows a lot of bravery and grit. But, like, is there an overall story? Not really. Like, there's just, it's really more of, like, a series of events that happen that aren't related. And it feels like the author just sort of, like, sat down and just pants the whole thing out. Like, there's not an overall story that's happening here. So that's another reason why I gave it 2 stars instead of higher. Another reason is just, like, something that really bothered me about this book is how often the author would describe beauty, and it would go hand in hand with good behavior, good people. And, like, the mistress in this book is Alice, and Gavin is supposedly in love with her, but she won't marry him. He wants to marry her, and so he settles for Judith, our heroine. But Alice is really the villain of the book. She is very devious, and she's really knows how to use her feminine wiles to get what she wants. Like, she is manipulative, and she, like, puts a finger in her eye to make herself cry to get sympathy from Gavin, and he falls for it every time. Like, the man is so dumb, honestly. And the final showdown is really her trying to harm and hurt the heroine, and she ends up being the one who gets burned with a vat of oil and disfigured forever. That really happens. Yeah, it's pretty shocking. But the interesting and sad, and something I don't like, is that Gavin in the beginning with Alice is just so caught up with her beauty, thinks she's absolutely breathtaking, totally gorgeous, just thinks she's the bee's knees and all that stuff. And then throughout the book, as he falls in love with Judith, and he's sort of has these moments with Alice where she's trying to get back in his good graces, he starts to notice things about Alice, her physical appearance, that he's like, she's not actually that pretty, you know? Like, maybe she's a bad person. And so he correlates, like, how did I ever find this skinny woman attractive? And wow, she's got, like, crooked teeth. How did I ever find her attractive? And that's always correlated with her bad behavior and him realizing she's actually a little bit manipulative and not that great of a catch, you know? So I don't love that. The author seems to lean into stereotypes very, very hard. Like, the beautiful golden heroine is virginal and perfect, and she's so lovely and she's so kind. And then the other woman who, the more, like, we see her get evil, the more uglier she gets, which is, bleh, you know, don't love that. So here are a few other notes that I put on here. Okay. From the wedding night rape to a few chapters later, he tickles her to try and cheer her up. Yeah, it's normal. The plot's all over the place. It's honestly like a very I already mentioned that. It's a series of unrelated events, no cohesive story. There is a lot of violence against women in this book. It's very casually mentioned, you know. It's like hitting you over the head with the idea that women are property and all this other stuff. And, like, I know that's realistic, but I don't understand the point of having that brought up so often. I just don't get it. I don't get it. There are definitely moments the heroine has where she feels like she's in love with Gavin once they've been married, and her reasoning, or her deciding that she's in love with him, or that she's starting to love with him, is that he shows these really small moments of kindness towards her, and oh, by the way, he stops raping her. And that just is sad, you know, like, that it's sad to me, and it feels really just sad and basic that her standards for him falling in love with him is that he's showing her a little bit of kindness. Like, didn't love that. There are several sort of phrases thrown about that Gavin says to Judith. Like, he's honestly rude to her a lot. Very condescending. He'll say things a lot like, why don't you just stay home with your embroidery frames? And I'm just like, is this a man I'm supposed to like? The sex scenes in here were not very descriptive. They were either, like, fade to black, mentioned, you know, passionate thrust, or that's it, or whatever. Or, you know, those are the moments when you know, she's not really into it. But then once she sort of, like, he starts to undress her with care or whatever, then it's all about, like, simultaneously finishing, you know? So, interesting choices there. Yeah, it's just, it wasn't, so it's not terrible, but it's also not good. And do I feel like this is a book that if you don't have like a nostalgic attachment to this book, or you're not reading it just to sort of see what was written at the time, do I think that this is a book that a modern day romance reader, historical romance reader would enjoy? No, I really don't think so, you know? So it's interesting. It's interesting. It was an interesting reading experience. I wasn't bored. I read this in a day. So that's saying something. But did I like it? No. You know, I mean, it did have a sweet ending, a very brief sweet ending. The heroine did show some grit, like I said, in the end, which I really liked. And there were moments that were kind of funny at times. But overall, it was a bit of a hot mess, and 2 stars. So I can see how people have very nostalgic feelings for this series, but I don't think that it holds up at all. In my opinion, like, this is never going to be a book that I recommend on this channel, and that kind of makes me sad because Jude Deveraux was a powerhouse in historical romance, and I know a lot of people love this series, but not me. Okay, so there you have it. That's my review on that. So the next book that I am reading is actually Skye O'Malley. I just barely started it, just barely into it. I am pretty excited about this, honestly. That's largely because of the blurb. So the blurb is basically that she is sort of a female pirate, it sounds like. She runs her own ship, and she has some very witty moments with Queen Elizabeth. So I'm interested in this one. It's very long. It's 21 hours, so let's see how it goes. That's the book I'm going to read next. I'll keep you updated when I have something to say about that. Y'all, good morning. I'm 40% of the way through Skye O'Malley. This is one of the most bonkers books that I have ever read. I have so much to say about this. Hello my friends, welcome back. Welcome back for the final clip in this vlog. We're in my bedroom because I had plans to like film a really cute clip while my tree was still up, you know, because we don't usually take that down until like January, but like all my family is home and I have some stuff that I want to talk about that requires the privacy of a closed door when children are home. So, okay, Skye O'Malley. Wow. So this book, this book was actually, I believe, published in 1980. Again, like I talked about this earlier, that I had a hard time finding books in my exact year that were available on audio. So I picked this one because it was pretty close to 81. And I had no idea what I was getting into when I picked this book up, y'all. This is without a doubt the most bonkers book I have ever read in my life. And I was riveted. I was completely riveted. I had to know what was going to happen next. And honestly, like, it's so strange to me because there really wasn't even a plot. Like, okay, so let me just quickly go over the basic idea of the book. Like, I can't even give you a plot synopsis because there is literally so much going on in this book. It would take me probably 20 minutes to give you a plot summary. There's literally so much plot. Like, so much is happening in this book. So much is happening. It's basically about Skye O'Malley. She's the youngest daughter of her father, who is an Irish man. He's like a low-level, not an earl, but he doesn't really have a title. He does like some trading with his ships and everything. He has 6 other daughters, and Skye is the youngest, and Skye is the most beautiful. And obviously, because she is the most beautiful, she is her father's favorite. He favors her. He really, really just, treats her like the special little princess she is because she's so beautiful. And a major thread running through this entire book is that Skye's power is really all about how beautiful she is. She has the type of beauty, once again, that was very popular in books written in this day and in this time, that men saw her and they had to have her. Like, they went out of their mind to get her, to own her, to claim her, to sleep with her, all that stuff. Like, she was the type of woman that men would do anything to possess. So, when it comes time for Skye to get married, the book opens when she's 15 years old. And she has this arranged marriage her father has set up that he thinks is going to be a good match for the family and all this other stuff. And the man is much older than she is, and he is without a doubt, her marriage with him was the worst part of this book. And I feel like when you look on Goodreads at the reviews of this book, you can see how people like DNF it so early on because he is absolutely insufferable. Like, he is terrible. He is one of the grossest characters that I have ever read about in my entire life. So she has this arranged marriage to this guy. His name's Dom. But before she marries him or has, been even engaged, she meets Niall, who is a young man who they're neighbors and things like that. And they fall in love very early on. And they're determined to have a life together. Nevertheless, their parents say, no, we're going to have these arranged marriages, and it is not with Skye and Niall. So when it comes time for Skye to actually get married, she does go through with the wedding. She marries this vulgar, despicable man named Dom, who is literally the grossest man on the planet. He's seriously so gross. Like, honestly, like, I was taking notes at first while I was reading this because I was like, there's so much happening. How am I going to have, like, enough brain space to talk about this book? And here are my notes, okay? Dom is so off-putting, all caps. 15% in, what is going on? Like, this book is wild. This book is freaking wild. Literally, so much happens. I know, I keep saying that, but I'm not telling you, and I feel like there was so much happening, it's very difficult for me to, like, organize my thoughts and tell you everything that's happening. But the basic overall plot is Skye and Niall love each other. But they'd never end up together until the very end of the book. And this is a 21-hour audiobook. The narration was top tier, by the way. Justine Eyre really delivered and made this a performance that I was so completely engaged with. I just absolutely loved this. I got this from my library through Hoopla, so I didn't buy it. But I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed this book so much that I need to find a physical copy of it. Like, this book was bananas in the most entertaining, odd, gross way possible. So, she marries Dom. And this guy, Dom, is really obsessed with the idea of, having sex with Skye. But he's also just willing to put it in whoever at any time. Like, there is a scene early on where he sees, like, Skye's maid, and he just, like, has sex with her right then, just in the hallway. It's very quick, it's very brutal, but it is pretty clear that the servant girl was, like, on board with it, But it's just, like, it's so it's just so uncomfortable how they describe him and his desire for sex, and how it is so just like gross. It's just off-putting. Like, it's not that his desire for sex is gross, it's the way that he views women and the way he talks about it's just like he is the worst. So honestly, like, if I had not read a few reviews and seen how quickly this plot, like, blows up, if I had thought she was going to be with Dom for the whole book, there's no way I could have read the whole thing, because he is terrible. So, spoilers up ahead, but, like, trust me, even if I spoil it, there's literally so much happening in here, you'll probably forget if you decide to pick this book up. By the way, star rating. I gave this book 3 stars, because it's not good. That's debatable. It's not great, right? There's obviously you have the violence against women. This is a bodice ripper. There is rape on page. There is rape casually talked about. There is rape of the heroine. There is rape of other characters. Like, it is on the page all the time. There is incest in here between Dom and his sister, and they sort of take Skye and they tie her to the bed, and they're determined to have, you know, their way with her, and they do, and that's pretty traumatic. It's never, like, the rape scenes are never very detailed, but they're definitely there, and it's just not great, but it's also, like, I think that I had come to expect that to be in this book, because it's a bodice ripper, you know that's going to be in there, you know? I feel like I'm very much losing my train of thought. There's so much to talk about this book, so 3 stars, because it's not perfect. There's also, like, a very, very gross suggestion of a scene where a very young teenage girl is sort of being forced into bestiality, and Skye jumps in and saves the day. So that's in there too. This is an erotic romance. Absolutely. This book is so freaking steamy. Like, it is so steamy. It is very, like, even from, like, the first few pages, it's talking about Skye's body and how her nipples are becoming, like, hard, and she's aware and she's awake and she's, like, turned on, and I'm just like, it's fascinating, honestly. Like, and also, this book is also fairly kinky. Like, it really goes to places that I did not expect a 1980s bodice ripper to go to. Like, it is extremely kinky and just completely fascinating, you know? So Skye has several marriages with people. She has one with Dom. When Dom and his sister are sort of, like, trying to force her, she ends up pushing him down the stairs. He becomes quadriplegic, and then because of the time period, this is set in the 1500s, he doesn't survive very long, because that's just not a condition that they were equipped to provide long quality of life for. So he dies, she's free, she ends up having amnesia from a shipwreck that she was in. She ends up being captured by this man who is basically a whoremonger and has a harem of women where she's trained to be a sex slave, sex worker, and it's fascinating. She ends up catching the eye of the whoremonger so fiercely that he falls in love with her, and he's actually really sweet with her, and that is, like, one of the first experiences that she had where it was, like, consensual, where she was enjoying it. He dies, and then she moves along. She gets her memory back eventually. She sees Niall, who, by the way, on her wedding night, Niall comes in and said, no, I claim first rights with this woman, like Braveheart. And so he and her have a hookup. That's how she loses her virginity with Niall. She doesn't get pregnant that time. She's a super fertile woman. You know, like, she has, like, 6 children. She has a lot of sex. She's basically screwing her way through this book, literally using her sexuality as currency, and also really owning that sexuality and taking her pleasure. And even if it's in a situation where she feels like she doesn't have any options, where consent isn't really allowed, she still is, like, determined to have a pleasurable experience. Like, it's just absolutely fascinating. Like, she's a very strong heroine. She is definitely a little bit stereotypical in that she's just so stunningly beautiful, but, like, she continues to have these terrible experiences all throughout the book. Multiple husbands that die. She has these children all the time. She's got, like, all these kids. she's having sex all the way through the book, you know, like she's had some dark periods in her life. She sees Niall, she still loves him, and then they're torn apart again. They're not together yet. Halfway through the book, like they see each other, they realize who they are, they realize that they're not dead, you know, because in the beginning, like that's what happened, like when they had that one night, and then like they were torn apart, and their parents like kidnapped Niall and took him away, and she was like led to believe that Niall didn't want to be with her anymore, and he was led to believe that she left him this letter. It's just like it is honestly completely bonkers. It's like soap opera worthy, but also like so completely riveting. Like I had to know what was going to happen next, because I'm just like, she cannot top the bonkersness that I just read. Nothing more bonkers will happen. It did. It did. And I was just like so completely captivated. Like there's a part of me that wants to rate this higher, but there's also a part of me that recognizes that there are still aspects of it that I can't give it a 4-star rating, because like I just can't, like I in good conscience I cannot recommend this book to a modern reader unless they are well schooled in romance, because they will not like this one bit. There are some quite shocking, horrific things that happen in here that if you are not familiar with Bodice Rippers specifically, you're not going to read this. You're not going to enjoy it. You know, you're going to like chuck it in a fire and be like, what in the world was Crystal's Bookish Life smoking? Because no. But like, if you haven't read this book and you sort of know that you're in for like some real bananas, awful things happening and in a Bodice Ripper, like y'all need to read this. You need to experience Skye O'Malley. Like this book kind of blew my mind. It kind of did. Like, I know that I'm rambling. There's so much happening in my brain about this book. Do I love it? I don't know. I am so fascinated with it. Ultimately, in the end, she ends up with Niall. They get there happily ever after. This, however, is book 1 in the O'Malley saga. There are more books you can read. And it is seriously an experience. This book is an experience. If you have not, like seriously, taking everything that I said into your brain, because it's a lot, and if you have not read Beatrice Small, or this book, and you're even a little bit curious about what kind of wild ride this would, I mean, like, y'all gotta pick this up. It's an experience. It's not like anything I've read before. You know, like I think about this compared to the Jude Deveraux book that I read, and I'm just like, wow, that book was so tame compared to this book. I'm a little obsessed with it, honestly. Like, this is one of those books that I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about. So, like, even though I said it's a 3-star, I don't know, y'all. Like, I'm still formulating my opinion on it. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. It's bonkers. And so let's circle back to what I was looking for when I started this vlog. Does this book hold any appeal for a modern romance reader? Someone who is not well-versed in historical romance. Someone who is not familiar with the concept of a bodice ripper. I don't think they're going to like this at all. Not at all. Because it's really more a series of adventures. Adventures in dark times that Skye has. And it's not a swoony romance. But is it completely fascinating? Yeah. Is it a book that I literally could not stop listening to? Yes. It literally consumed my life for 2 days. Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. It's definitely got its problems. Like, a whole ton of them. Like, all of the problems we could list, right? But it was also absolutely compelling. And weirdly also, like, very sex positive. Like, the way that Skye just really enjoys sex and also is not afraid of her body. Like, she doesn't, like, the puritanical nature that a lot of heroines had in historical romance, like, Skye doesn't have that at all. You know, like, she really embraces her sexuality and she's not afraid of it and she knows how to use it and she literally screws her way through her life, honestly. There's also something really, I think, beautiful to be said about how even though she loved Niall, like in the beginning, and they were torn apart, it never ever diminished her capacity to sort of look for another partner, another love, you know? Like, she wasn't the type of woman who was going to be punched down because she didn't end up with the man that she fell in love with at first, you know? Like, this really is a book about Sky's indomitable will. Like, she is not going to be put down at all. I don't know. It's bananas. But man, I really liked it, honestly. I did. I really did. It was fascinating. It's definitely out there. Like, things are happening and you're like, you really have to suspend your disbelief because things happen to her that are just so unbelievable. But if you really want to get sucked along on a completely out there wild ride, you should read this. It was fascinating. So my other question was, do I see the appeal that this book would have when it was written? Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. If this, like, especially comparing it to Velvet Promise, this book is so much more empowering, I think. I think it's a lot more empowering for women. I think it's definitely more sexy, like much more explicit. Like, if that was a concern about, you know how I talked about how one theory about having rape so often in Bodice Rippers was that it gave women a venue to sort of explore sexual desire in a way that they felt like they weren't allowed to have. Like, this is a powerful book expressing that. Like, Sky goes after her sexual desire. It's fantastic in that way. It's also just a rip-roaring adventure, you know? Like, I think when I think about The Flame and the Flower, which I also mentioned earlier, and I've heard interviews with Kathleen Woodowitz where she says that what she wanted to do was write an adventure novel, but with a woman as the heroine, as the protagonist. Like, that is exactly what Skye O'Malley is. It's crazy good. It's honestly unforgettable. And now that I said it was a 3-star, I really think it's a 4-star. I think it's a 4-star. I think it's a 4-star simply because of how much it gripped me. Like, and like, Skye isn't necessarily a super nuanced character. She's pretty surface level, but she is so powerful about moving through life and making it her own in a time when that was next to impossible, with situations that were thrown at her that made it feel like impossible. Like, she kept rising above. Like, I don't know. It was a good time. It was a good time. So, wow, I have rambled quite a bit. This vlog is very long. I had so many emotions and thoughts while I was reading these 2 books. This was an experience that I'm never going to forget. Thank you so much, Jess, for asking me to be a part of this reading vlog committee. I don't know that I ever would have picked up Skye O'Malley otherwise. I really don't. I don't think I would have. And I'm so glad I did. Like, wow. Wow. So, to sum up, Skye O'Malley, 4 out of 5 stars. With a whole bunch of trigger warnings, disclaimers, like... but also, like, that was a good time. And Velvet Promise, I stand by my 2 stars on that. It wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't great. I could see the appeal that it had at the time when it was written, but I didn't feel that same magic today, which I wish that I did, but I didn't. But the magic for Skye O'Malley, for me, was very high. That was fascinating. So, alright, thank you so much for watching this vlog, for listening to me ramble. I hope y'all enjoyed it very much. Yeah, if you've made it this far and you want to leave me an emoji, how about you leave me like a 4-leaf clover or something? Or, yeah, would that be okay for Skye O'Malley, our Irish woman of power? And I just want to say thanks so much for watching. Thanks to Jess for asking me to be a part of this reading vlog show. It was a ton of fun, and I'll see y'all in my next video.